My name is Isabella, and from as far back as I can remember, I always felt like a ghost inside my own home. I lived in a house full of people, yet I was invisible. Other kids would run into their parents' arms after school, their mothers waiting with warm smiles, their fathers asking about their day. But me? I'd walk through the door and it was as if the air swallowed me whole. No one looked up. No one asked how my day was. Sometimes I wondered if they even noticed I had come back. Before I take you deeper into my story, let me pause here. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered why your family didn't see your worth, then you'll understand me. So stay with me till the end, because what started as pain became the fire behind my revenge. I was the youngest in my family, and maybe that's why I thought things would be different. Maybe the youngest is supposed to be cherished, protected, loved. But in my house, being the youngest meant being the forgotten one. When I was 6 years old, I had my first birthday party, or at least what I believed would be one. I woke up that morning with butterflies in my stomach, imagining balloons, a cake, maybe even friends from school. I remember carefully picking out my favorite dress, one with tiny yellow flowers. But when I walked into the living room, the house was silent. No balloons, no cake, no one singing happy birthday. My mother was busy folding laundry, my father reading the newspaper, and my siblings were already arguing over the TV remote. I whispered softly, "Today's my birthday," hoping someone would smile or hug me, or even just say, "Happy birthday." But no one looked up. I spent that evening staring at the empty dining table, thinking maybe they were planning a surprise. The hours dragged on. By bedtime, the surprise never came. That was the night I realized, in my family, my happiness didn't matter. You'd think a child forgets small things, but I didn't. Each forgotten moment carved itself deep into me. When I won a drawing competition at school and came home clutching my little trophy, my father barely glanced at it before going back to his work. My mother muttered, "That's nice," without even lifting her eyes. But when my brother scored a goal in soccer, the whole house celebrated like he had won the World Cup. My sister got flowers, gifts, and a special dinner for her school performance. And me? My achievements were like whispers in the wind, heard by no one, valued by no one. Why, that kind of silence hurts more than words. I often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, why am I here? Why was I born into this family if they never wanted me? As a child, I didn't understand neglect. All I understood was that I wasn't enough. Not enough to be loved, not enough to be celebrated, not even enough to be noticed. I'd look at my reflection in the mirror, searching for something wrong with me. Was I too quiet? Too different? Did I do something bad without knowing it? The truth is, I was just a little girl, and yet I carried the weight of feeling unwanted like it was my fault. My house was always full of noise. TV blaring, siblings shouting, pots clattering in the kitchen. But none of that noise was for me. Even at the dinner table, I often sat silently while everyone else talked. If I tried to speak, my words were brushed aside or I was told, "Not now, Isabella." The food would pass from hand to hand, plates filled, glasses poured, and somehow mine was always the last plate, the last glass. It was as if I had to fight for even the smallest space at the table. And when I think about it now, I realize the neglect wasn't just about forgetting birthdays or ignoring trophies. It was the everyday erasure of who I was. When no one wants you, you find comfort in other places. For me, it was books. I would hide away in the corner of my room, curled up with fairy tales where the lonely girl always found magic. I dreamed of castles, of faraway lands, of someone who would finally see me. But every time I closed the book, reality reminded me that my life wasn't a fairy tale. There was no magic, just the same cold walls and people who barely noticed I was alive. And this was just the beginning. Because little by little, the girl who was ignored would grow up. She would learn to carry her silence. She would learn to pretend she didn't care. But deep inside, a fire was burning. A fire that would one day become revenge. Birthdays are supposed to be the one day when you feel seen, the one day when your family reminds you that you matter. But in my house, birthdays came and went like any other day, as if I didn't even exist. I remember turning 8. I woke up early, full of hope, wearing my best dress, waiting for something. Anything. Maybe a cake, maybe balloons, maybe just a smile. But the house was busy with everything except me. My father buried in his newspaper, my mother rushing through chores, my siblings glued to the television. The day passed, and no one said the words I longed to hear. Not even a simple, happy birthday. When I turned 10, I tried again. A week before, I reminded my mother. She didn't even look up, only said, "We'll see." On the day itself, the only cake I had was a small cupcake from my teacher at school. I carried it home carefully, thinking maybe someone would light it with me. But when I arrived, no one noticed. So I sat in my room alone, lit the tiny candle, whispered happy birthday to myself, and blew it out in silence. Year after year, it was the same. The empty dining table, the empty chairs, the empty silence. Every time I told myself not to expect anything, not to hope. But no matter how much I tried, a part of me still wished, and every year that part broke a little more. It wasn't about the gifts, it wasn't about the cake, it was about being remembered, being loved, but I wasn't. At Christmas, my siblings opened bright boxes of gifts while I got socks, or sometimes nothing at all. At family dinners, I sat quietly, invisible, while laughter passed around me like I wasn't even there. Each forgotten birthday carved another scar. Each empty chair reminded me of my place in that house, present but unseen. And yet, deep inside, a small fire kept burning, a voice telling me that one day they would regret forgetting me. One day they would see me in a way they never had before. That quiet fire became my only gift, the gift of strength, the gift of patience, and the beginning of the revenge I didn't even know I was planning. Growing up in that house taught me something early. Silence often hides the loudest truths. My family didn't speak openly about the cracks in our lives, but I could feel them in the way the walls trembled during arguments, in the way conversations stopped when I walked into the room, in the way whispers seemed to follow me like shadows. I didn't know it then, but my family carried secrets. Ones that explained the coldness, the favoritism, the way I was treated like an outsider in my own home. It started with little things. At night, when the house was supposed to be asleep, I would sometimes hear my parents arguing in hushed voices. Words like not fair, you promised, and she'll never know, slipped through the thin walls. At first, I didn't understand. I was a child, and to me, parents were supposed to be a single, unshakable unit. But the tension between them was unmistakable. I also noticed how my relatives treated me differently compared to my siblings. When we visited my grandmother, she would shower my brother and sister with kisses, gifts, and warm smiles. For me, there was always a slight hesitation. Softer, more forced smile. A gift that felt like an afterthought. One Christmas, my brother received a shiny new toy car, my sister got a beautiful doll, and I was handed a plain notebook. My grandmother said, "You can write in it." The words sounded kind, but the tone carried something else. Something distant. As I grew older, the pieces started to come together. My parents' fights grew louder, harder to hide. I once overheard my mother sobbing, telling my father, "She deserves to know the truth." My father's voice, sharp and angry, replied, "No, we agreed. This stays buried." The truth. That word lodged in my mind like a splinter. What truth? What were they keeping from me? I searched for clues in small things. Old photo albums where, strangely, there were fewer pictures of me as a baby. Documents locked in drawers. Even the way my parents looked at me sometimes, like I was both theirs and not theirs at the same time. Then came the day I finally understood. I was 14. My mother thought I had gone to school, but I had stayed home with a fever. From my room, I heard my parents arguing again. This time, the words were clear. "She's not even yours," my mother cried, her voice breaking. "How much longer can you keep pretending?" Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. And then my father's voice, low and furious. "If she finds out, everything will fall apart. Do you want that? Do you want her to hate us?" I sat frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might burst. Not his? What did that even mean? Was I not his daughter? The room felt like it was spinning, the air too thick to breathe. I waited until the house was quiet, then I confronted my mother. My voice shook as I asked, "What did you mean? What were you talking about?" Her face went pale and then she sat down as if her legs couldn't hold her anymore. She tried to deny it at first, but when she saw the determination in my eyes, she broke. The truth spilled out like a dam finally giving way. My father wasn't my biological father. My mother had me from a relationship before him, a love she described as complicated and mistaken. When she married my father, she brought me into the marriage, and he agreed to raise me as his own. But as the years passed, the truth became a source of bitterness, of resentment. He saw me as a reminder of a past he wished didn't exist. My mother confessed that this was why the family treated me differently, why I was never fully embraced. Her words crushed me. I wanted to scream, to run, to undo everything I had just heard. But at the same time, it all made sense. The coldness, the distance, the way I was invisible in my own home. I wasn't truly one of them, not in their eyes. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my heart heavy with betrayal. Everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. I wasn't my father's child. I wasn't my sibling's full sister. I was an outsider by blood, and now I understood why I had been treated like one all along. But knowing the truth didn't make the pain easier. It made it worse. Because once you know you were never really accepted, every unkind word, every ignored achievement, every forgotten birthday feels sharper, more deliberate. From then on, I saw my family differently. Their laughter without me, their celebrations where I was only half invited, the way they sometimes looked at me as if I didn't belong. It wasn't just in my head. It was real. Yet, with that truth came something else. A quiet fire inside me. If they couldn't see me as part of them, I would stop trying to fit into their broken puzzle. I would carve out a place of my own. I would build a future where my worth wasn't questioned, where I wasn't living in the shadows of secrets I didn't create. But deep down, another part of me made a silent promise. One day, when I rose, when I finally stood in my own light, they would regret the way they treated me. They would regret the lies, the secrets, the years of making me feel less than I was. Because nothing fuels determination like being denied love, and nothing drives revenge like the truth finally being revealed. The truth about my family's secret should have been the hardest blow of my life. But I soon discovered that betrayal has many faces, and sometimes the wounds from those you trust most cut even deeper. After learning I wasn't truly my father's child, I began to look at everything differently. My mother's careful smiles, my father's silence, my siblings' laughter without me. It all carried the weight of lies. Still, I told myself I could endure it. I told myself I was strong enough to survive the coldness, but I wasn't prepared for how cruel betrayal could become once it was no longer hidden. It started subtly. My siblings, who had always treated me like an afterthought, began using my secret against me. At first, I didn't even know they knew. One evening, my sister whispered, "You're not even really one of us," when my parents weren't listening. I froze, my throat tight with panic. How much did she know? How much had my mother or father told her? She smirked, her eyes glinting with a cruel satisfaction before walking away. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of my secret spreading filled me with dread. School was the only place where I still had some sense of identity, where my achievements mattered, even if only to teachers. But what if my classmates found out? What if the whole neighborhood began to whisper about me? The next morning, my fears became reality. At breakfast, my brother laughed openly at me and said, "Careful, sis. You don't want people to know you don't even belong here." My spoon clattered against the bowl as my face burned with shame. My parents exchanged a look but said nothing. Nothing. Their silence was the cruelest betrayal of all, as if they had already given up defending me. It didn't stop there. My siblings mocked me at every chance. Half-sister, they'd say with sneers, not even real family. Their words cut like knives, each one reminding me of the bloodline I could never change. And when relatives came to visit, I noticed the subtle shift. My aunt's forced compliments. My uncle's careless remark. "She's different, isn't she?" They thought I couldn't hear, but I did. I always did. The betrayal didn't just live inside the house, it spread into the world outside. One afternoon at school, a girl I barely knew smirked and said, "Heard you're not even your dad's kid." My stomach dropped. My siblings had told someone. My secret was no longer safe. My classmates whispered, some with pity, others with amusement. I wanted to disappear. That day, when I got home, I confronted my family. My voice shook with rage as I shouted, "Why did you tell them? Why did you ruin me like this?" My mother looked away, ashamed. My father's face hardened, and all he said was, "Maybe it's better you accept the truth." Better? Better for who? For them, maybe. But for me, it was another chain around my heart. The betrayal didn't stop at words. It infected the way I was treated daily. When food was served, my plate was the last to be filled. When family decisions were made, my voice was never heard. My needs, my dreams, my feelings, they all became invisible because, to them, I wasn't truly one of them. But the most painful betrayal came from the one person I thought I could trust, my mother. She was supposed to be my safe place, the one who would always shield me. But instead, she grew distant. Sometimes when she looked at me, there was regret in her eyes, as if I was a mistake she couldn't erase. One night, I overheard her telling my father, maybe I was wrong to bring her into this family. Those words shattered me. My own mother, the woman who gave me life, saw me as a burden. I realized then that I wasn't just unloved by my father, but unwanted by the very person who should have loved me unconditionally. That betrayal carved scars deeper than any physical wound. I carried them in silence, pretending to be strong, pretending their words didn't matter. But inside, I was breaking. Every laugh at my expense, every cold glance, every reminder that I didn't belong. It piled up until my chest felt too heavy to bear. And yet, even in the midst of betrayal, I discovered something about myself. Each cruel word became fuel. Each rejection became a spark. Betrayal might have broken me in the moment, but it also lit a fire inside me. A fire that whispered, "You will rise. You will not be destroyed by them. One day, they will regret underestimating you." Because betrayal may wound deeply, but it also teaches resilience. And while my family betrayed me in every possible way, they unknowingly gave me the strength to survive without them. They thought they were cutting me down. Instead, they were sharpening me. One day, I promised myself I would use that strength. And when I did, their betrayal would no longer define me. It would destroy them. There comes a time in every story when silence is no longer enough. A time when the pain you've been burying for years claws its way to the surface, demanding to be heard. For me, that moment came like a storm. Sudden, fierce, and impossible to ignore. It was the breaking point. By then, the weight of betrayal and rejection had been pressing on my chest for years. Every insult, every dismissal, every moment of being treated like an outsider had stacked up inside me like bricks on a fragile wall. And as much as I tried to be strong, to pretend that their words couldn't reach me, I was still human. And humans can only take so much before they break. It happened on an ordinary day, though I suppose no day in that house was truly ordinary. My sister had been chosen for yet another family celebration. It was her graduation, and my parents planned everything perfectly. Decorations, a party, even a special dinner with relatives. I tried to tell myself I was happy for her. I tried to smile as she received compliments, as relatives hugged her and praised her achievements. But then I heard it. A relative, standing not too far away, whispering loudly enough for me to catch. "It's no wonder she turned out so well. She's their real daughter." Those words cracked something inside me. I stood frozen, my stomach churning, my vision blurring. Real daughter. The implication hung heavy in the air, and I realized in that moment that my secret was no longer just within the family. It was a story passed around like gossip, a label I couldn't escape. Later that night, when the celebration had quieted down, I confronted my parents. My voice trembled as I asked, "Why do you let them talk about me like this? Why do you let everyone treat me like I don't belong?" My father barely looked at me. His words were sharp and final. "Because you don't." That was it. No sugarcoating, no excuses. just the raw truth he had been holding back for years. He didn't see me as his daughter. He never had, and he never would. I don't remember what happened immediately after. I think I stood there in shock, my chest hollow, my mind blank, but something inside me snapped. The tears that I had been holding back for years finally poured out. The anger I had swallowed down erupted like fire. "You think I don't belong?" I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. "Then why did you even keep me here? Why didn't you just throw me out like garbage? Why did you let me believe I was part of this family when all you ever did was remind me I wasn't?" My mother reached out, her face pale, but I pulled away. I couldn't bear her touch, not after everything. All the years of silence, all the years of trying to earn their love, it all came flooding out of me in that moment. I told them how much it hurt to be ignored, how much it cut me to watch them cheer for my siblings while I was left in the shadows. I told them how their betrayal had broken me over and over again. And when I was done, when my voice was raw and my tears had soaked my face, I said the words I had never dared to say before. "I don't need you, any of you. One day, I'll walk out of this house and never look back. And when that day comes, you'll regret everything." The room was silent. My siblings stared at me with wide eyes, unprepared for the fury in my voice. My mother cried softly. My father looked away, and I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet, forgotten child. I wasn't the one who silently accepted their cruelty. I was someone who could fight back. That night was the breaking point, not just because I finally let out the pain I had carried for so long, but because I made a promise to myself. I would no longer beg for their approval. I would no longer break myself trying to fit into their world. From that moment on, I would focus on building my own. But here's the truth about breaking points. They don't always end with peace. Sometimes they leave scars so deep that even as you move forward, you carry them with you. My heart was raw, my trust shattered, and though I vowed to rise, I also knew that the wound of betrayal would follow me everywhere. Still, something powerful was born from that night. A seed of strength, a vision of revenge. Because I realized that my greatest power would not come from shouting at them or from demanding their love. It would come from proving, through every success, every achievement, every triumph, that I didn't need them at all. And when the time came, when I finally rose higher than they ever imagined, my revenge would be simple. I would live a life so full, so bright, so undeniable, that they would be forced to look back at their cruelty and drown in regret. That was the night the broken girl inside me began to fade, and in her place, a stronger, fiercer version was born. Leaving isn't always about packing bags and walking out the door. Sometimes it starts in the heart long before your feet take the first step. For me, the decision to walk away from that house, the place I once called home, wasn't a single moment. It was the result of years of being ignored, years of betrayal, years of aching to belong and realizing I never would. After breaking point, things inside the house didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. My father barely spoke to me. When he did, it was short, sharp commands. My mother, caught between guilt and silence, hovered but never defended me. My siblings? They acted as if my outburst had confirmed what they always believed, that I didn't fit, that I wasn't truly one of them. I tried for a while to pretend I could still endure it, to go through the motions, to smile in front of neighbors so no one would suspect how broken our family really was. But every night when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I felt the truth pressing on me. Staying was killing me slowly. The decision to leave became clearer one afternoon. I had just come back from school with another certificate of achievement. I don't even know why I still brought those things home. Hope, maybe. Hope that one day they would notice. I placed it on the table in front of my parents. My father didn't even glance at it. My mother gave a weak smile before tucking it under a pile of papers, as if it meant nothing. Later, I overheard my brother mocking me to a friend. "She thinks she's smart. She doesn't even realize she's just different. Not really family." The words were like knives, each syllable a reminder that no matter what I did, I would never escape the label. That night, I sat alone in my room and stared at the few things that were truly mine. The notebook my grandmother had given me, The medals and certificates I kept hidden in a drawer, a few books, and a photo of myself as a little girl. I looked at that photo, at the child with wide eyes and a hopeful smile, and I whispered, "You deserve better than this." And that's when I knew. I had to leave. Walking away wasn't easy. It meant stepping into a world I wasn't prepared for, a world without safety nets. But staying meant continuing to suffocate under the weight of their rejection. I had no choice. I started preparing quietly, saving small amounts of money from odd jobs, tutoring classmates, babysitting, anything that would give me a little independence. I kept it secret, because if my family knew, they would have stopped me. Not out of love, but out of fear of shame. What would people say if their daughter left? What stories would spread? The day I finally left is etched into my memory. The house was quiet, my siblings gone, my father at work, my mother in the kitchen. I packed my few belongings into a small bag. Every sound seemed louder, every creak of the floorboards threatening to expose me. When I reached the door, my mother appeared. Her eyes fell on the bag, then on me. For a moment, I thought she would stop me, but she didn't. She just stared, her face pale, her lips trembling as if the words she wanted to say were trapped inside her. "I can't stay here anymore," I whispered. My voice shook, but my resolve didn't. Tears filled her eyes, but she only nodded. "Be safe," she said softly. Those were her last words to me as I stepped out of that house. No plea to stay, no fight to keep me. Just two simple words, and in a way that hurt more than anything else. The world outside wasn't easy. I had no clear plan, no steady place to go. I stayed with a friend at first, working late into the night at small jobs, trying to save enough to stand on my own. There were days I was hungry, nights I was exhausted, moments I wanted to give up. But every time I reminded myself why I left. I reminded myself that going back was not an option. Walking away gave me freedom, but it also gave me clarity. I realized I didn't just leave a house. I left behind years of pain, rejection, and betrayal. I left behind the version of myself that begged for scraps of love. And with every day that passed, I grew stronger. My achievements, once hidden in drawers, began to shine in the real world. Teachers noticed me. Employers saw my dedication. Strangers recognized my worth in ways my own family never had. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it was also the most powerful. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't shouting at those who broke you. It's quietly leaving them behind and building a life they can never be part of. And deep down, I knew one day they would realize what they had lost. One day, they would look around their house, at the empty chair where I once sat, at the silence where my voice used to be, and they would feel the weight of regret. Walking away didn't just free me. It condemned them to live with the emptiness they created. Leaving home was only the first step. The real test began afterward. Because walking away from pain doesn't erase it. It follows you like a shadow, whispering in your ear, reminding you of everything you lost and everything you never had. For weeks after I left, I carried those whispers. Every lonely night, every meal I ate alone, every small failure seemed to mock me, telling me that maybe my family had been right all along, that I wasn't enough, that I would never belong anywhere. But even ashes carry embers, and if you're strong enough, you can fan those embers into a flame. That's what I decided to do. At first, survival was all that mattered. I worked whatever jobs I could find. Babysitting, cleaning, tutoring kids who were only a few years younger than me. The money was small, but every dollar was a piece of freedom. I learned how to stretch meals, how to live with less, how to find joy in little things, like a quiet moment of peace after a long day, or the pride of buying something with money I earned myself. But beyond survival, I had a vision. I wanted to rise, not just for me, but as proof. Proof that the girl they rejected, the daughter they didn't claim, the sister they mocked, could become more than they ever imagined. Education became my weapon. I threw myself into my studies with a determination that scared even me. Late nights at the library, early mornings with books spread across the table, weekends sacrificed for extra classes. I gave everything I had. My teachers noticed. Some of them even pulled me aside and asked why I worked so hard. I smiled and said, "Because I have no other choice." One teacher in particular became a mentor. She saw something in me that my family never had. She encouraged me, pushed me, reminded me that my worth wasn't tied to where I came from, but to where I was going. Her belief in me was like water to a starving plant. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Slowly, I began to rebuild. My achievements, once ignored at home, started opening doors. Scholarships, opportunities, recognition. All the things I had dreamed of were finally within reach. And each time I succeeded, I imagined my family hearing about it. Imagined their surprise, their regret. The thought fueled me, pushing me through every sleepless night. But rising from the ashes wasn't just about success. It was also about healing. I had to learn how to live without the love I never received. I had to teach myself that my value wasn't measured by their acceptance. Some nights I cried myself to sleep, the pain too heavy to bear. Other nights I looked in the mirror and whispered, "You're enough. You've always been enough." Slowly, those words began to feel true. Of course, life wasn't easy. There were setbacks, failed exams, jobs that didn't work out, days when exhaustion threatened to break me. But unlike before, I had something stronger inside me now. Resilience. A determination forged in years of rejection. Every failure became fuel. Every stumble became a lesson. And with each step forward, I rose higher. I started to achieve things I once thought impossible. I gave speeches, won awards, and earned respect from people who knew nothing of my past. Strangers celebrated me more than my own family ever had. There's a strange kind of power in that. To know that the people who doubted you most will one day hear your name spoken with admiration. To know that the ashes they left you in became the soil where you grew stronger. And yet, even as I rose, I couldn't shake the thought of them. My family. Did they know what I was becoming? Did they regret the way they had treated me? Did they ever sit together and realize that the daughter they had rejected was building a life without them? I told myself it didn't matter, that my revenge wasn't about them at all. But deep down, I knew part of me wanted them to see. Part of me wanted them to feel the sting of regret every time they heard my name. Because rising from the ashes wasn't just about healing. It was about making sure the fire that once burned me would one day burn them with the memory of what they lost. And so I kept going. Higher, stronger, brighter. Every step forward was a reminder. I wasn't the broken girl they left behind. I wasn't the outsider they mocked. I was proof that sometimes the ones who are cast aside rise the highest. Because ashes don't mean the end. They mean a beginning. And for mine, I was building a life that would one day leave them speechless. Success changes people, not in the way most think, with pride or arrogance, but in the quiet way it shifts the way you see the world. Years had passed since the night I walked out of that house, the night my mother locked the door and told me, "You don't belong here." I had built myself into someone new, someone strong, someone the old me would hardly recognize. But the past never truly disappears. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to resurface. And for me, that moment came unexpectedly. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon when I received an invitation, a community event hosted back in my hometown. My name was on the list of guest speakers. I had been chosen for my achievements, for the work I had done, for the life I had built. The thought of returning stirred something deep inside me, a storm of emotions I couldn't quite untangle. Part of me wanted to refuse. Why reopen wounds that had barely healed? Why walk back into a place where I was once invisible? But another part of me, the stronger part, whispered, "This is your moment, not for them, but for you." So I agreed. The drive back felt surreal. Roads I once walked barefoot now stretched out before me, familiar yet foreign. Every landmark, every corner carried memories, some warm, most painful. I passed the park where I had cried alone as a child, the school where my efforts were ignored, the street where laughter had excluded me, and finally, the house. That house. I slowed the car, my heart pounding as I saw it again. Nothing had changed. The same worn paint, the same crooked fence, the same curtains pulled tight as if hiding secrets. But to me, everything was different. Because I no longer stood outside as a rejected child. I returned as someone who had risen from the ashes. I didn't stop, not yet. My destination was the community hall where the event would take place. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed cars lined up, people milling about, chatter filling the air. My name was on their lips, and for once, it wasn't in whispers of dismissal, but in tones of admiration. Walking inside, I was greeted with applause. Faces lit up when they saw me. Strangers shook my hand, thanked me for inspiring them, told me how proud they were. The warmth of their words was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the cold silence I had grown up with. But then, amid the crowd, I saw them. My family, my mother, my siblings, even distant relatives I hadn't seen in years. They stood off to the side, watching me. Their expressions were unreadable. Shock, maybe pride, maybe regret. My mother's eyes met mine for the first time in years. For a moment, time froze. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but in presence. The woman whose words had once crushed me now stood uncertain, hesitant, as if unsure of her place in my world. I turned away, focusing on the stage. This moment wasn't about her. It was about me. The speech began. I spoke about resilience, about rising above pain, about finding strength in places you never expect. I didn't mention names, but every word carried the weight of my story. I saw people nodding, some wiping away tears. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw my family listening. Really listening. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood clapping, cheering. It should have been the proudest moment of my life. And in many ways it was. But then I saw my mother. She was crying. Silent tears streaked her face as she clapped along with everyone else. Afterward, she approached me. Tentative, unsure, as if stepping into unfamiliar territory. "Isabella," she whispered, her voice trembling. I don't know what to say." 1,000 responses flooded my mind. Anger, bitterness, words I had rehearsed in my head for years. Where was this pride when I needed it? Where was this support when I was begging for it? But when I looked at her, all I felt was nothing. Not hate, not love, just an emptiness where both should have been. "I don't need you to say anything," I replied quietly. "I've already built a life without your words." Her face crumpled, and for a moment I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered every lonely night, every forgotten birthday, every locked door, and the pity vanished. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People surrounded me, asking for photos, sharing stories, thanking me. My family remained on the sidelines, watching. They wanted to approach, to reconnect, to claim me now that the world celebrated me. But I kept my distance. Because revenge doesn't always come in shouting matches or grand confrontations. Sometimes, revenge is as simple as living well in front of the people who once wished you wouldn't. Driving away that night, I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. My return wasn't about them. It was about me proving to myself that I had survived, that I had risen, that I was free. The past no longer held me. I had come full circle. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. Because while I had returned once, there would come a time when the past and I would collide again. And when that day came, I would be ready. The night after my return, I lay awake in my hotel room, staring at the ceiling. The applause still echoed in my ears. The faces of strangers who believed in me replayed in my mind. But so did another face, the one I couldn't shake. My mother's. The tears in her eyes, the way her lips trembled as if she had something to say but couldn't. For years, I had dreamed of this moment. Not the speech, not the success, but the confrontation. The day I would finally stand in front of her and demand answers. Why? Why wasn't I enough? Why did you lock me out? Why did you make me feel like I didn't belong in my own home? The next morning, I found myself standing at the gate of that house. The gate I had once rattled as a desperate child, begging to be let in. It creaked open with the same sound I remembered, and as I stepped inside, memories crashed over me like waves. The living room looked smaller, almost fragile. The walls that had once loomed over me now seemed insignificant. My siblings sat quietly, avoiding my gaze. And then there was my mother, sitting in her chair, waiting. Isabella, she whispered, as if the name carried the weight of her guilt. I sat across from her, my heart pounding. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was thick, filled with years of unspoken pain. Finally, I broke it. Why? My voice was steady, though inside I was trembling. Why did you make me feel like I didn't matter? Why did you treat me like a stranger in my own home? Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time, she didn't look away. I don't have excuses, she said softly. I was broken. I took out my pain on you, and I can never undo that. Her words cut deeper than silence ever had, because they weren't excuses. They were confessions, honest, raw, and heavy. I wanted to scream, to tell her her pain didn't justify destroying mine. I wanted to demand apologies for every forgotten birthday, every ignored achievement, every night I cried myself to sleep. But instead, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Did you ever love me? The room went still. My siblings shifted uncomfortably. My mother's shoulders shook. And then, through her tears, she whispered, yes, but I didn't know how to show it. Those words hit harder than any denial, because love that is never shown, never spoken, never felt, does it even count as love? I stood up. That's not enough, I said, my voice breaking but strong. I spent my whole life starving for scraps of affection you never gave. And now, when I've built myself up without you, you want me to believe in a love I never saw? No. You don't get to rewrite the story now. She reached out, her hands trembling. Please, Isabella, give me a chance. Let me be part of your life now. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me, the child who once longed for her approval, ached to say yes, but the woman I had become knew better. I don't need you anymore, I said quietly. You had your chance and you wasted it. My life is full now, full of people who see me, who value me, who love me without conditions. I came here not for you, but for me, to close the door you once slammed in my face. Her sobs filled the room, but I didn't stay to hear more. I walked out, my head high, my heart heavy but free. As I stepped into the sunlight, I realized something profound. Revenge isn't about making others suffer. It's about reclaiming yourself. And I had done exactly that. By standing tall in the place where I was once invisible, by refusing to let their regret chain me, I had won. The final reckoning wasn't hers. It was mine. I had faced the past, demanded answers, and chosen my freedom. And as I drove away for the last time, I whispered to myself, never again. Because I wasn't the forgotten child anymore. I was the woman who rose from nothing, who turned silence into strength, who turned rejection into resilience. And my story was no longer theirs to control. It was mine, entirely, fiercely, beautifully mine. I was sitting at my desk in the intern cubicle when my manager walked in, holding an envelope. My heart skipped as she handed it to me with a smile. Inside was the offer. Official, printed, real. My name, my position, my salary. It wasn't millions, but it was more than enough to cover rent, bills, and still save a little. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. No more wondering if I'd make rent. No more juggling 3 jobs at once. I could finally breathe. That night, I celebrated by buying myself a small cake from the corner bakery. I lit a single candle and whispered, for me. But the celebration was short-lived, because the very next morning, another message appeared from my parents. Heard you got a job. Congratulations, we're proud of you. Don't forget family always comes first. When will you visit? The audacity left me speechless. Proud? Where was that pride when I was locked outside in the rain, when I went hungry because they shut me out, when they said I didn't belong? I stared at the message for a long time before replying with one word. Busy. It was the truth. I was busy building the life they told me I'd never have. Busy carving out a place in the world that was mine, earned by my own sweat and determination. And busy making sure I never fell into their trap again. At work, I flourished. Every project I touched seemed to grow. I worked late nights, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I felt alive in ways I hadn't before. My confidence grew. My ideas started being taken seriously. One evening, after a particularly long day, my manager stopped me before I left. Olivia, you've got something special. Keep this up and you won't just be an employee here. You'll be a leader. Her words echoed in my mind all night. A leader. Me, the girl who was once told she didn't belong even in her own home. But alongside the pride was a strange bitterness, because deep down I wanted my parents to see this, not to win their love back. I no longer craved that, but to prove them wrong, to show them the daughter they threw away had become something they could never control, never diminish, never own. Weeks turned into months, and with every paycheck, I grew stronger. I furnished my small apartment with care, piece by piece, turning it into a place that felt safe and truly mine. But still, their shadows followed. They didn't stop messaging. Sometimes it was, "We miss you." Other times, "You should visit. Your cousins ask about you." And once, late at night, I received a message that told me everything I needed to know. "Don't forget us now that you're making money. We're family. We deserve to share in your success." Deserve. The word nearly made me laugh. Where was that sense of deserve when they left me with nothing? Where was it when I cried myself to sleep, hungry and alone? That night, instead of replying, I wrote in my journal, "They didn't raise me. They abandoned me. Every achievement is mine, not theirs. And one day, I'll make sure the world knows it." That entry became a turning point. From then on, I stopped saving their messages out of pain. I saved them as evidence, evidence for the day when their hypocrisy would be laid bare. Because revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in silence, in patience, in waiting for the right moment to let the truth speak louder than any scream. And I was willing to wait. When I walked into the living room that night, I felt like I had stepped into a world I no longer recognized. The house was the same wooden floors that creaked under my footsteps, same cream-colored walls where the paint had begun to fade, same family portraits frozen in time, smiling faces that seemed like ghosts of a happiness that had long abandoned us. But the silence, that silence was deafening. It was not the kind of silence that brought peace. It was heavy, suffocating, like it carried the weight of every word left unspoken, every truth that had been buried too deep. I saw my mother sitting on the couch, her posture stiff, her fingers clutching the hem of her shawl like it was the only thing keeping her together. Across from her sat my father, leaning back in his chair, expression cold, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the floor as though the answers to our problems might appear in the wooden grains if only he stared long enough. Between them lay a space that once had been filled with warmth, laughter, and the comfort of belonging. Now it was just an invisible wall that none of us dared to cross. "Sit down, Olivia," my mother finally said, her voice strained as if forcing those two simple words out had cost her more than she could afford. I obeyed, sitting at the edge of the sofa, my palms pressed against my knees to stop the trembling. For a long moment, no one spoke. The air in the room was so thick that I could feel it in my lungs, pressing down with every breath. Finally, my father broke the silence. "Enough is enough," he said, his voice steady but sharp. This This pretending, this avoiding, this constant bitterness, it has to stop. We can't go on like this." I lifted my eyes to meet his, searching for even a trace of the man I used to look up to. The man who once smiled at me with pride when I won a school award. The man who promised me the world when I was little. But that man was gone, replaced by someone hardened by resentment and disappointment. "What do you mean by that?" my mother asked, though I could tell she already knew. Her voice cracked, betraying the fear she was trying to conceal. My father leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly. "I mean, we need to face the truth. This family, it's broken, and we can't fix it by pretending otherwise." My heart dropped at his words. They were sharp, cutting deeper than any blade. Broken. That's how he saw us. That's how he saw me. "You think walking away will fix it?" I asked, my voice trembling but growing louder as the words poured out of me. You think leaving us, abandoning what's left of this family, will make the pain disappear. No, Dad. It won't. You'll just carry it with you, wherever you go. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he closed his eyes, as though the truth in my words was something he didn't want to admit. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, but no less firm. Sometimes, Olivia, staying does more harm than leaving. My mother shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. No, you don't get to just walk away from your responsibilities. From your daughter. From me. We've been through too much. You don't get to decide that we're finished. Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. But my father's expression didn't soften. It only grew harder. And in that moment, I realized something painful. He had already made up his mind. The rest of the conversation blurred together in my memory. Accusations, defenses, tears, long silences where the weight of our crumbling family pressed down on us like a storm about to break. I wanted to scream, to beg them to stop tearing each other apart, to remind them of the love that once bound us together. The words stuck in my throat, choked by the fear that maybe, just maybe, that love was truly gone. When the argument finally ended, it left behind an emptiness more unbearable than the fight itself. My father retreated to his room, slamming the door behind him. My mother sat frozen on the couch, staring into the distance like she was trying to hold on to something invisible, something slipping further and further away. And me? I went to my room, closed the door, and let the tears fall freely. For hours, I cried into my pillow, the sobs shaking my body until exhaustion finally pulled me into a restless sleep. But even in sleep, I couldn't escape the truth. Our silence had broken that night. But what replaced it wasn't healing. It was a deeper fracture, one that seemed impossible to mend. The next morning, I woke to the sound of drawers opening and closing, bags being zipped shut. My heart raced as I stumbled out of bed, my legs weak beneath me. In the hallway, I saw him, my father, packing a suitcase. "Dad," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You're leaving?" He stopped, his shoulders tense, his back still turned to me. For a moment, I hoped he would stop, that he would put the suitcase down, turn around, and realize what he was about to lose. But instead, he zipped it shut with a final, decisive pull. When he finally turned to face me, his eyes were red-rimmed, but his expression was resolved. "Olivia, I have to. For all of us." And just like that, my world shattered. The morning my father walked out of the house, everything seemed quieter than usual. The sun streamed through the curtains just the same. The birds outside sang like they always did, but nothing felt the same. It was as though the world had decided to carry on as normal, while inside our walls, everything had come undone. When I stepped into the kitchen, my mother was sitting at the table, a cup of tea in her hands. She wasn't drinking it, just holding it, staring at the steam as though it held answers to questions she couldn't bring herself to ask. Her face looked pale, drained, her lips pressed together in a thin line that barely concealed the storm raging inside her. Across from her was the empty chair, the one where my father had sat every morning for years, sipping his coffee, reading the paper, occasionally glancing at me with a smile or a scolding word, depending on my behavior. That chair had always been full. Always. But now it was just wood and fabric, hollow and cold, a reminder of absence that screamed louder than any words could. I stood there, frozen, until my mother finally noticed me. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw something that broke me. Pain, yes, but also a terrifying emptiness. It was as though she had lost not just a husband, but a piece of herself. "Sit down, Olivia," she whispered. I obeyed, sliding into the chair beside her. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence between us was raw, unfiltered, not the kind of silence that came from avoidance, but the kind that came after devastation, when words weren't enough. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "He's gone." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I know." She set the teacup down, her hands trembling so violently that it rattled against the saucer. He didn't even say goodbye properly. After all these years, after everything we've been through, he just packed his bag and left. Her words tore through me, not because they were new, but because they were true. and there was nothing I could do to change them. I reached out and took her hand in mine, squeezing it tightly. We still have each other, Mom. We'll get through this. Somehow. She gave me a weak smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're too young to carry all of this, Olivia. You shouldn't have to. But I did. Because what choice did I have? My father had walked away, and that meant the burden of keeping us together now rested on my shoulders, whether I was ready for it or not. The days that followed blurred into one another. Each morning, the empty chair stared back at us, mocking us with its silence. Meals felt incomplete. Conversations were half-hearted. Nights were longer, colder, filled with the sound of my mother crying softly in her room when she thought I couldn't hear. I threw myself into my schoolwork, into chores, into anything that could keep my mind occupied. But no matter how busy I kept myself, I couldn't escape the hollow ache in my chest, the constant reminder that we were no longer whole. One evening, about a week after he left, I came home from school to find my mother sitting in the living room, staring at the front door. A suitcase sat beside her. My heart leapt into my throat. "Mom?" I asked, panic rising. "What are you doing?" She turned to me, her eyes red and swollen. "I can't stay here anymore, Olivia. Every corner of this house reminds me of him. Every sound, every smell. It's unbearable." Tears welled in my eyes. "So you're leaving too?" She shook her head quickly, rushing to me, pulling me into her arms. "No, baby, not leaving you. Never you. I need space. I need to breathe." Her words were meant to reassure me, but they left me with more fear than comfort. Because if she left, even for a while, what would I have left? Just me. Alone. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I thought about the fights, the silence, the bitterness that had led us here. The next morning, when I came downstairs, my mother's suitcase was gone. A note sat on the table, her handwriting shaky but clear. "Olivia, I need a little time away to clear my mind. I'll be back soon. Please stay strong. I love you more than anything. Mom." I stared at the words until they blurred from the tears streaming down my cheeks. She was gone. Not forever, but gone all the same. And for the first time in my life, I was truly alone. The house felt colder than ever that day. Every creak of the floorboards echoed louder. Every shadow seemed darker. The empty chair at the table wasn't just empty now. It was joined by another. Two chairs, side by side, reminders of the parents who had left me behind, whether by choice or by necessity. I sat there, staring at them, feeling the weight of loneliness press down on me until I could hardly breathe. And in that moment, I made myself a promise. I would survive this. Somehow, I would endure, even if it meant picking up the broken pieces of my life one by one. Because if I didn't, the silence, the emptiness, the loneliness, it would swallow me whole. And I refused to let that happen. Chapter 14. Rising from the Ashes. The house was too quiet, too still. Every night after my mother left, I would sit at the kitchen table, staring at the two empty chairs across from me, and I would feel that crushing weight again. The weight of abandonment, of betrayal, of promises broken and love that seemed to have vanished. But on the 14th night, something shifted inside me. I looked at those chairs and realized I had a choice. I could keep drowning in the silence, letting it break me piece by piece until there was nothing left of the Olivia I once knew. Or I could take that silence, that pain, and turn it into something else. Something stronger. I thought back to all the times I had been overlooked, dismissed, treated like a shadow in my own family's story. My achievements forgotten, my birthday ignored, my voice drowned out by arguments that had nothing to do with me. I thought of the way my father had walked away without looking back. The way my mother had needed space more than she needed me. And then I thought of myself. Of the girl who had endured every storm, every cruel word, every lonely night, and was still standing. That realization lit a spark inside me. A spark of anger, yes, but also of determination. I stood, pushing the chair back with a scrape that echoed through the house. I walked to the living room and stared at the old family portrait hanging on the wall. We looked so happy in that photo. My father with his hand on my mother's shoulder, My mother with her arm around me, all of us smiling like nothing could ever touch us. But that was a lie. A moment frozen in time that didn't tell the story of what came after. For the first time, I didn't feel sadness looking at that picture. I felt resolve. I whispered to myself, "You left me broken, but I won't stay broken." From that night forward, everything changed. I started small, waking up early, making my own routines, cooking meals that tasted of self-reliance rather than loneliness. I poured my energy into my studies, into building myself into someone who would never again be invisible. Each test I aced, each goal I accomplished, I carried like a weapon forged from all the pain I had endured. And slowly, the silence of the house no longer felt like an enemy. It became a companion, a reminder of what I had survived, a canvas on which I began painting a new version of myself. Weeks turned into months. My mother did return eventually, her eyes tired, her spirit bruised. She tried to apologize, to explain, but something in me had shifted too much. I wasn't the same daughter she had left behind. I listened, I nodded, but I didn't crumble the way I once would have. I wasn't waiting for her love to complete me anymore. As for my father, he never came back. Not once. At first, the thought of that absence cut deep, like a wound that would never close. But with time, it became just another scar. Painful, yes, but a part of me that I carried with pride, because every scar told a story of survival. And I survived. More than that, I grew. I stopped asking why me, and started saying, watch me. Watch me rise from the ashes of the life you burned to the ground. Watch me turn every forgotten birthday, every ignored achievement, every night of loneliness into fuel for a fire you can't extinguish. This isn't the end of my story. It's the beginning. The beginning of a woman forged in pain but built on resilience. A woman who learned that sometimes the greatest revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's becoming so strong, so unshakable that those who broke you realize they didn't destroy you. They created you. So when I look back now, I don't see just abandonment or betrayal. I see the girl who sat at that table with two empty chairs and decided she would never be defined by who left her behind. I see Olivia, and I know she will never be invisible again.